out next year for Blake Bortles and trying to gauge how fast he comes, or how far he comes. For the Bengals, if there's any one area of concern, it's their rush defense. They're averaging, allowing 141 yards a game, and the Jaguars have found creative ways to run the ball the last couple of weeks, most notably with Denard Robinson. So that is maybe the only soft spot in this game, but I have no reason at home to pick against the Bengals. They should win this one easily.
Yeah, Keith, it's another cat fight in Houday City. You've got a Jaguars team that has given up the 7th most points allowed in the league. And just as we discussed about the Jets, if their offense can't score, if they're averaging just shy of 15 points per game, but giving up just over 27 points per game, where the Bengals, we know they could post easily 3 touchdowns in this matchup. I do like Denard Robinson, however, for the Jaguars, if you're going to look at anybody to play from that side. The Bengals are giving up 141 yards per game, as well as 8 touchdowns to date. Cecil Shorts, you can put him in as a wide receiver 3. I mean, he's usually pretty dependable, and people who've had him on their team or have him on their team now know that. For the Bengals, you've got an array of players you could look to. You could look at Andy Dalton this week as a bye week replacement or an injury replacement. Gio Bernard, who I do know there was an injury flag placed on him today. Whether he plays or Jeremy Hill plays, consider them both for the start. AJ Green might make it back, and even if he makes it back, Mohamed Sanu I still think is a top play this week. In fact, if they're both on the gridiron, both should score. And the Bengals defense, you get them started against a team giving up the most fantasy points allowed to date. And that's not just up to this week. That's like for several weeks in a row. Keith, the Bengals win the cat fight in perfect fashion.
No. I need a buzzer like, no, we're going to reject that one. We're going to reject.
For everybody
that
out
one.
there, Keith and I have a little contest. I get to come up with these
for once it's not me coming
colorful endings, and you get to criticize me.
For once it's not me coming up with the crappy puns. That's all. All right, last one before we hit the break here for a little bit. We're making excellent time. 585-633-7487 for your lineup questions. 585-633-7487. All right, so the San Diego Chargers travel to the Miami Dolphins. And the Chargers, 2-game losing streak heading into this one, and they face a Miami team that has been playing better ball as of late. Whether it's good, better than bad doesn't necessarily mean good, but going into Miami is not all that easy. And the area of concern for San Diego is not their offense so much, aside from the running game, of course. It's the defense is pretty evenly matched with Miami. So if you get into a shootout, who are you going to bet against? I'm going to pick Phillip Rivers, and I'm going to take San Diego on the road.
This is a tough game to figure because you got a Chargers team that's been struggling of late against good defenses, but then you've got a Dolphins team that's seemingly playing well, but they're still losing to good offenses, for example, such as the Packers. So this is a close game. I'm going to reverse course from the other night, and I'm going to take the Chargers in this one. I like their offense. I like Phillip Rivers. I perfectly believe that they can produce as much offense as the Packers did when the Packers played the Dolphins just a couple weeks ago in Miami, but the Chargers have a better defense. Phillip Rivers, Brandon Oliver, Antonio Gates, Keenan Allen, get them all started. For the Dolphins, you could look at Lamar Miller as an RB2, certainly Mike Wallace as a wide receiver 2, and Ryan Tannehill, he's a low QB. He's a QB2 this week. He's kind of in the middle for me. You can play him, but really you shouldn't unless you absolutely have to. Both defenses are low on options. It's just only because they're pretty good, but you wouldn't expect the world from them. Electricity and water just don't mix. Chargers win.
And that's as good a point as any to take a break. 585-633-7487 if you have lineup questions. 585-633-7487. We'll be back in about 4 minutes, folks. You're listening to thefantasygreek.com's Week 9 Fantasy Football Starts and Sits on Late Night Sports Radio.
Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
TheFantasyGreek.com's Week 9 fantasy football starts and sits. Jim Saranteas from TheFantasyGreek.com joining Keith Grieve, myself from 87sportsfans.com. We're here every Wednesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time to take all of your fantasy football questions, lineup questions. If you're in need of advice, that's what we're here for. We're the Dr. Ruth of fantasy football. Nobody these days even knows who Dr. Ruth is, do they? They have no idea.
Oh, you know what? I'm kind of glad.
Yeah, it's probably a good thing.
Yeah, seriously. How did that woman end up having a career doing what she did?
Because she was the only one that was really doing it famously on TV.
That's true. And somebody out there had sort of a sense of seriousness and of humor.
Oh, absolutely.
All at the same time.
Dr. Ruth Westheimer.
Oh, I can't believe you just did that.
That's how she talks. This is Dr. Ruth.
Okay, stop.
If you have any problems, if you know what, you can call me, and we will talk about it in front of millions of people, okay?
All right, Dr. Ruth, I'll call you later.
All right.
Go away.
By the way, Dr. Ruth, what do you think about the Redskins traveling to Minnesota? I think that in Minnesota, there's more babies being born because it's colder and nobody goes outside.
Okay, for our listeners out there.
Obviously, that was not scripted.
Yes.
That's what happens when I attempt to improv. So, but back to what I was saying. I would say we're here every Wednesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time for fantasy football questions. Sundays and Thursdays on Late Night Sports Radio, you have the Bob Sullivan Show from 10 to midnight. Monday night is 87 Sports Fans Live, also from 10 to midnight. And on Tuesday nights, you get a special shot of the Claire versus Carlson Show. So stay tuned to all of the late night sports radio shows, fresh every week, Sunday through Thursday. All right, the Washington Redskins traveled to the Minnesota Vikings, and the Redskins got a nice little shot in the arm there from Colt McCoy last week, going into Dallas and winning an overtime game. Yeah, I know. I realize Romo missed a couple series, but the bottom line is McCoy could have gone in there and stunk up the joint, especially with the way Dallas has been playing lately, and he didn't. And he gets rewarded by having Robert Griffin III start this week. So, who do you pick in this game? Washington versus Minnesota. Teddy Bridgewater, the rookie quarterback for the Vikings, has shown signs, maybe, kind of, sort of. He's got a certain amount of savvy to him. They're definitely missing Adrian Peterson, although McKinnon is starting to assert himself as the back of choice in that game. Or on that team. The defenses are kind of even. I can't pick the Vikings. I just can't. I mean, and maybe it's because I'm a Chicago Bears fan. Maybe it's a mental block, and maybe I'm wrong on this. But I think the Redskins' defense is better than their numbers are going to tell you. So I'm going to pick the Redskins on the road.
Yeah, talk about tribal, Keith. This is an intriguing.
Who was talking about that, Jim? All that talk happened off the air, Jim.
Absolutely, Keith. Look, this is an intriguing game because it features two teams that can play better than their records reflect. But the bottom line is the Vikings have a terrible offense, just like the Jets, just like the Jaguars. They're averaging 17.4 points per game. And quite frankly, against the Redskins, regardless of who the quarterback is, that's just not going to cut it. Now, all that having been said, you've got to look at RG3 and hope that his time out, he's actually learned something about his players like Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon and Alfred Morris, and he's going to be able to use them better than he was before he got injured. RG3, he's a high quarterback too this week. I just think it's a week to avoid him if you've been hanging on to him. And I don't like the matchup necessarily against the Vikings for the quarterback position. But you should still be starting Deshaun Jackson, Pierre Garçon, because they've given up 13 passing TDs to date, and that's enough for me to say both of these players could each put up 100 yards, and one to both of them can each score a touchdown. Now, in terms of the Vikings, I think it gets a little bit more dicey in terms of who you can play. You can look at Jerick McKinnon as a flex. You can look at Cordero Patterson as a flex. But the problem is that despite their record, the Redskins defense, and you saw it last week in Monday Night Football against the Cowboys, they were the real reason why they were in that game that whole time, because they stopped a very, very, very good Cowboys offense from getting in stride, and I just don't see any of that happening against such a weak Minnesota Vikings defense. Sound the horn, Keith. Redskins win.
Alrighty. The next game up is the St. Louis Rams at the San Francisco 49ers. The Rams, who have not laid down and called it quits with a 2-5 record, the first time they met on October 13th was in St. Louis. The Rams, the Rams got out to an early lead, and San Francisco had to figure it out and come back and come storming back. They did. There's really not a whole lot of breakdown here to be made. St. Louis is a lot more wishy-washy on defense. And the 49ers are just a better offensive team. Austin Davis, the surprise of the year, having a fine season. But I like the 49ers better, and they're at home, so I'm going to pick them.
You know, this is a tough game for the Rams. The 49ers are coming out of their bye week, and they're number 11 in scoring allowed, while the Rams are number 3 in scoring allowed. And basically what that equates to, at least for the 49ers offensively, is 25 touchdowns, 8 rushing, 11 pass. It's just too difficult of a matchup for the Rams going out west to San Francisco. But I will say that